Item 4 is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Do I have any declarations of interest? That's none. Item 5 is to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting on the District Planning Committee held on 8th of July 2021. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Raise hands to show agreement, please. Thank you. Item 6, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. We go on to item 7, which is the application for today, and that is DM/20/4127 Barnes Court and Friday Farm, Turners Hill Road, Crawley Down. Just to remind members, this is an outline application with all matters reserved except for access. And I will hand over to Mr. King for the report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Before I get into the presentation, I'll just very briefly go through the update sheet. So you see at the top, there's a slight addition to the recommendation, just to ensure that the proposed works to add an additional section of footway next to the Turners Hill Road is picked up in the 106 legal agreement. The other points relate to updates that are from the applicant just regarding their intention to install fibre to premises within the application, and also to future-proof the site with regard to ducting for EV charging points for all car parking spaces. But that's in essence for the update sheet. So just to run through the application, it's an outline planning application that seeks planning permission for an expansion of the existing industrial estate at Barnes Court and Friday Farm. It also seeks planning permission for the one-for-one replacement of the existing dwelling known as Friday Farm Bungalow. So the application's in outline form, seeks consent for the principle of the development and the means of access only. So this is the, just to orientate members, this is the application site here outlined in red. Comprises industrial areas at Barnes Court and Friday Farm. The site's located on the western side of the Turners Hill Road, just to the south of the Duke's Head Roundabout. And the site's within the countryside as defined in the district plan. So just zooming in a little bit more. So that's the site, to say, outlined in red. Got the existing vehicular access point onto Turners Hill Road. And vehicles are directed, as we saw from the site visit, to come out of the site and turn left to go up to the Duke's Head Roundabout. In terms of what's around the site, it's referred to in the committee report, and I'll go through this later, but just to orientate members now, there are a number of listed buildings adjacent to the site, and they're outlined in red where the cursors is. So those are the three listed buildings that are referred to in the report. We'll come back to that. There's also a public right-of-way that runs along the southern boundary of the site at this point here. And just in terms of, again, the emerging planning policy position, this is an extract from the submission draft of the site allocations document that just shows the two sites, the existing industrial sites where the land is safeguarded. And that's under policy SA 34 that's referenced in the committee report. So this is just the extract plan that shows those safeguarded sites. So, as I say, at the moment, the site comprises industrial buildings and area of hard standing up here at the northwest. You see that this slide is orientated the other way. So north is here. This is the Duke's Head Roundabout in this position here. Along the eastern boundary, it's quite well screened all the way along the Turners Hill Road. This is the public footpath that runs alongside the site. That's quite a well screened boundary as well. The back of the site, you've got a number of fishing lakes, and then it's a woodland across here. To the north of the site, there's some commercial buildings, telephone exchange. You've got the listed building up at the top corner here. The applicants have got a right of access across this existing access track that comes out onto the Turners Hill Road. That's referred to in the committee report. It's the intention to use that as a pedestrian and cycle link. It won't be for vehicular access. Vehicular access will solely be as existing from this point here. The existing Friday Farm bungalow is located in this broad location here, and it's illustratively shown to be relocated down at the southern part of the site here where the cursor is. But as I say, that's illustrative. And just the other thing to point out in terms of the planning policy position is that the vast majority of the site is within the Copthorne neighbourhood plan area, and as we know, that is going to referendum today. So that's referred to again in the report. So this is an illustrative plan that shows how the site could be developed. So the existing buildings that are numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4, they're the ones that would be retained, and the buildings that are labelled A to L, they're shown illustratively, as I say, as demonstrating how the site could be redeveloped. The amount of floor space that would be created is set out on page 16 of the committee report. And you see the majority of that floor space would be what's now class E, G, I, which is the old light industrial, with a smaller amount being storage and distribution. The proposed replacement or one-for-one replacement dwelling would use the existing access point that's onto the Turners Hill Road. So as I say, this is just illustrative to show how the site could be brought forward. The applicants have illustratively shown footpath improvements within the site to the public right-of-way, then looping round behind the fishing lakes through the site, and then coming out again at the edge of the site here, where they've got a right of access, as I say, out to the Copthorne Common Road. But all of that and the routing of that, etc., is illustrative. The applicants also propose works to the Duke's Head Roundabout, and we'll come on to that in the next slide. Minor changes to the access to the site in terms of slightly widening the central reservation area there. But the site, as we see from the photographs, you come out and it directs you to turn left. So if you want to come southbound, you have to go round the Duke's Head Roundabout and come back. In terms of the off-site improvements to the Duke's Head Roundabout, essentially it's extra lanes being put in at the southern arm here. So you'd have 3 lanes at the point you join the roundabout, left turn, straight and right, and an extra lane on the southbound arm of the roundabout at the Duke's Head. So that's been accepted by the Highways Authority, and their comments are set out in the committee report. It's also referenced in the report, and this is the slight addition to the recommendation, refers to the proposed footway adjacent to the Turners Hill Road, immediately to the south of where the public right-of-way presently terminates. So the idea is that you would come to the end of the public right-of-way, be able to walk along the footpath here, and then cross the road at this point where there's better visibility, because the road curves around slightly here. So if you move further south, you've got a better sight line to cross the road. So that's that proposed element of the scheme there. Just some photographs of the site as it is at the moment. So these are views of the vehicular access into the site. So this is within the site, looking out to the exit. So you can see that's the exit that directs you to turn left. There's the signage there. That's looking the other way into the site. So again, that's if you're coming into the site, you'd be going here. If you're coming out, you'd be going around here. These are just views on the Turners Hill Road itself. So again, that's the entrance into the site. Views within the site of the industrial building. So these are at the northern end of the site. This is within the site, looking southwards. So the fishing lakes are over across this area. Some more views within the site. So that's from the back. So fishing lakes in the foreground and the industrial buildings at the back. This is a view looking up the area that the applicants have a right of access over to join the Copthorne Common Road, and that's looking back through the site to the exit, vehicular exit onto Turners Hill Road. This is a view a bit further down the Turners Hill Road. So this is the access point into the Friday Farm bungalow, and the public right-of-way comes out at this point. So that's the existing bungalow building that would be demolished, and these are the land around that particular building. And just as a final slide, that it's referred to in the committee report, but there are some capacity improvements that are secured under the St Modwyn scheme that's being built out, and they're due on the 250th occupation of the St Modwyn site. But the proposed improvements on this scheme are in addition to that. So you can see you would have 3 lanes proposed on the back of this scheme, whereas the St Modwyn site only secures what's shown here. So, bye. Sorry, go back to the site layout plan. So in terms of history and policy, you'll see that there's been quite a bit of planning history on this site, and that's set out on pages 14 and 15 of the report. There's been 2 dismissed appeals, and the views of the inspector on those schemes are important considerations, particularly in respect to the landscape impacts of the scheme. As I've mentioned, the sites within the Copthorne Neighbourhood Plan area going to referendum today, and mentioned the reference to the site submissions document. So that's the planning policy background. In terms of the issues, I'll very briefly run through them because they're set out within the report. But in terms of the principle, that's dealt with on page 21. The site is within the countryside, so the starting point is policy DP12. Where you see the aim is to maintain or enhance the rural and landscape quality of the district. Development can be supported where it does this, and it's supported by other policy references in the plan. And you'll see in that section that policies DP1 and DP14 deal with economic development, and emerging policy SA34, to say, allows for expansion of commercial sites in the countryside. You'll see that officers agree with the previous inspector's findings that we don't feel there would be an adverse impact on the landscape from the countryside, and there would be clear economic benefits from this proposal in terms of jobs and the benefit to the rural economy. But because this isn't a small-scale expansion in relation to what's already on the site, your officers are of the view that whilst there's some support for the policy proposal in policies DP1 and DP14, it's not total support. So that's the principle. Landscape and character, that's dealt with on page 27 of the report, so I won't go through that in great detail. In terms of neighbour amenity issues, that's dealt with on page 31 of the report. You'll see that there's no objection from the council's environmental health officers to the scheme. There are suggested conditions to control lighting and hours of operation, and they're set out at the back of the committee report. Those conditions 12, 13 and 23. In terms of design, this is an outline application, so design is a reserved matter, but you'll see from page 32 of the report that there's no reason why a well-designed scheme can't come forward at the reserved matters stage. Key issue on this one, access and transport, that's dealt with on page 33 of the committee report. You'll see that the Highway Authority have no objection to the application, and we've gone through the mitigation that's proposed in terms of works to the Duke's Head roundabout. Members will know the test in terms of impacts on the highway itself is whether there's a severe impact, and the Highway Authority is satisfied that with those mitigations in place, there won't be a severe impact. Accessibility, that's dealt with on page 37 of the report. Trees and ecology issues, that's all on page 40. The site does adjoin ancient woodland at the southern corner and down this area, but you'll see from the report that the council's ecological consultant and the tree officer are satisfied that any works to the improving that public right of way can take place without causing harm to the ancient woodland area there. Listed buildings, that's dealt with in some detail in the report. I highlighted where those listed buildings were. The Firs is the northernmost listed building. I'll just go back to that slide. So the Firs is the northernmost listed building, Poplar's Place to the east of the site, and then Shepherd's Farm to the southeast. And you'll see that in your officer's view, whilst there's some impact on the settings of these listed buildings, That's in terms of any harm, that's at the lower end of less than substantial harm. And you'll see the balancing exercise that's been undertaken in the committee report and its officers' view that that less than substantial harm is outweighed in this case by the economic benefits of the proposal. So I think overall, and to summarise, whilst the proposal's not in full compliance with the development plan, when read as a whole, we're of the view that there's no landscape harm from the proposal, and there would be clear economic benefits from it. And for those reasons, we feel that the scheme can be recommended for approval, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. I have one letter of objection that I will read out, and we also have Councillor Phillips as ward member for Coptham to speak after I've read this. This is from Mr. Douglas Ford from Crawley Down. We request that you refuse this application as we are very much opposed to such a massive expansion on this commercial site for the following reasons. Turners Hill Road is essentially a residential road, with the Barnes Court site being the only sizable commercial site along it. Its present activities are tolerable, but doubling or trebling them would not be. There would inevitably be a very big increase in commercial vehicle movements to and from the site. Vehicle access into Barnes Court commercial area will continue to be via the existing access arrangement on Turners Hill Road. This would obviously make the normal rush hour congestion between Turners Hill, Crawley Down and the Duke's Head Roundabout, which is already bad, but very much worse. As I have pointed out before, there are already long-standing safety issues with vehicles ignoring the no entry sign when exiting this site going south, rather than first going north to the Duke's Head Roundabout, as they should do. This is an accident waiting to happen. The arguments against increased traffic on Turners Hill Road and the Duke's Head Roundabout were a significant factor in the refusal of the LRL First Farm Housing Development Planning application at this same location by Mid-Sussex District Council and subsequently on appeal, and nothing has changed. A greatly expanded site will inevitably increase not only vehicle movements but possibly also noise and light pollution at night. This application disingenuously claims that this massive expansion of this commercial site is to meet the needs of local businesses. Nonsense. What needs? There are no such needs, and particularly not now, as Crawley's own report during the continuing coronavirus pandemic confirms. And he states the Crawley's forecast for Crawley's economy. A recent Centre for Cities report predicts 50% of Crawley's 94,000 job employment base is at risk of redundancy / furloughing, the highest proportion of any urban area in the country. The same report predicts almost 60% of all Crawley's exporting jobs will be adversely impacted, which will seriously undermine the ability for Crawley's economy to recover quickly once COVID-19 crisis is over. A separate report by Hatch Regeneris identifies Crawley as being one of the most exposed nationally to job losses and businesses failures due to COVID-19 crisis. The third report by the Centre for Progressive Policy forecasts that Crawley will see a 42% drop in economic output. And the initial findings of the Business Intelligence Gathering Exercise May 2020, 74% of Crawley businesses surveyed are significantly less busy since the crisis began, and nearly a quarter have had to cease trading completely. 80% of Crawley businesses have seen a significant drop in turnover, and nearly a quarter of businesses have seen the turnover reduced to zero. Right, okay. Over 40% of the businesses have had orders cancelled. I think this is very sad, but inevitable consequences of this Therefore, it's just where is this purported need locally for yet more commercial buildings, and certainly not in this residential area, some distance away from Crawley. Manor Royal in Gatwick on the other side of the M23, and definitely, according to this report, not now or in the next few years. Excuse me. Right, last paragraph nearly. Miss Sussex District Council Planning Department, excuse me, and we local residents fought a very long and thankful successful battle against the property developer LRL's first farmhouse estate proposals that also incorporated this Barnes Court site and Friday Farm. That proposal was rejected by MSDC and it then also lost an appeal. Excuse me. Allowing this massive Barnes Court commercial expansion would drive the coach and the horses through the grounds for refusing that application. And we strongly suspect that approving this Barnes Court proposal would inevitably mean that first farm residential proposal, which you and we fought so hard for 7 years to prevent, would be resurrected to try to let it in through the back door. So I maintain there's no justification whatsoever for the expansion of the Barnes Court commercial site here in the Turners Hill Road and Duke's Head locality, as more commercial buildings are clearly not needed locally. And I really cannot understand on what grounds MSDC Planning Department, for whom I assure you I have the greatest respect for my many years' experience dealing with them, have recommended it for permission, so I respectfully request that you refuse this application. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Phillips, just to remind you that you are not timed, but I ask you to be as brief as you can, please.
I certainly will, Chairman. Thank you. Good afternoon, members.
Before we go on, Chair, can I actually try to ask that the tall speakers make certain use microphones and bring them in? I struggle on that one.
Thank you. Yes, if you can direct yourselves into the microphones, please.
I have attended 2 meetings on this site in the last 2.5 years with planning officers and the owners. On both occasions, the officers were adamant that expansion of this site was unsustainable and would not be supported by MSDC. I would like to know what has changed in that time for this site to be now considered sustainable. It was previously indicated to the owners that improvements to the site would be supported to the limit of the existing footprint. The report before you also concedes that expansion of this site is contrary to DP12 of the MSDC plan. In the last 3 years, many thousand square feet of industrial space have been built in Copthorne on the St Modwyn site, and it is likely as a result of the site allocation development plan currently with the inspector that an additional area of industrial space in excess of the proposed increase on this site will be approved. I would submit that in the region of an additional 100,000 plus square feet of industrial space for one village is sufficient. If there is a requirement for similar industrial units in the area, these should be included in the third phase of the St Modwyn's development, as was proposed in the original 2013 planning application. But in recent submissions, St Modwyn's claimed that their research does not indicate a requirement for small units, hence they are applying for large warehouse units instead. The site falls in the boundary of Copthorne and Crawley Down, with the vast majority of the site being in Copthorne. As this is the case and the Copthorne neighbourhood plan is going to referendum as we speak, I believe it should be given more weight than the officer suggests. Given the positioning of the site, the report concedes that the workforce on the site and the unsustainability of the road for cyclists, they will have to use cars to travel to and from work. There is a bus service, but this is infrequent outside peak hours, and the peak hours service has been cut by 25% in the last year. This surely indicates that this is not a sustainable site. The report concedes that this is contrary to DP12 of the neighbourhood plan, MSDC plan. The officer dismisses the Copthorne neighbourhood plan as not forming part of the development plan, but as it proceeds to referendum, I believe it should be given substantial weight. COP10 of the Copthorne Plan states that proposals for industrial use on the A264 and A220 will not be supported. This is to protect the rural nature of Copthorne Common and the surrounding woodlands. As the area is served by several sites offering small industrial units, the Copthorne Plan seeks to protect existing businesses and does not seek to expand it beyond the industrial space currently being developed on the St Modwen site on the western boundary of Copthorne, unless it is built in the built-up area of the village. Transport movements usually increase on sites in proportion to the usable industrial space. I apologise for being cynical, but having sat on the other planning committee, I suspect a lot of the reports we see are produced to show the required result rather than being totally balanced, and to suggest by increasing the workspace on the site in excess of 200%, this will only increase traffic movements by a far smaller percentage is very unlikely to happen. The road existing to this site is the developer's submission at overcapacity, and while an improvement is proposed at the Duke's Head Roundabout, which is very welcome, I doubt that this will relieve the congestion on this road, which will make heavy vehicles turning into the road difficult and make a bad situation worse. The difficulties of exiting this site are apparent in that the existing site has no right turn from the site, as turning right is dangerous due to the proximity of a bend to the south of the entrance. It should be noted that this restriction is regularly ignored, and given that the developer against proposing that exit from the site should be limited to a left turn in a northerly direction only, if the proposal is approved, a condition should be approved so that the exit from the site should be designed so that exiting traffic cannot turn right. With all traffic exiting north, it means the traffic wishing to go south has to go all the way around the Duke's Head Roundabout and double back on itself. I would suggest that this limitation on the site exit would also indicate that the site is not suitable for expansion. Members, the officer's report on several instances does indicate that it isn't a clear-cut decision on this site, and that there are, while there are several pros, there are various problems where it contradicts the neighbourhood plan, the council's plan. In addition to the effects of the rural nature of the area contra DP12 and the unsustainable nature of the development, contrary to DP21, the problem with the site access and the effect on the already overcapacity of the roads and the desire of the Copthorne neighbourhood plan to restrict the expansion of further industrial space beyond this substantial space already proposed, I would urge members to reject this proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. Just to remind members that when you mentioned about the access, the actual island is going to be put further back into the site and with the clear markings for the traffic to go north. And obviously we've heard that Highways have no objections to this and they're quite satisfied with that. So I will throw this open to members for discussion. Anyone wish to speak? Please. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got one question, please, if I may. Refer to page 35 in the report, capacity of the highway network. It's touched on by Councillor Phillips. Both at the AM peak and PM peak, the Duke's Head Roundabout, it says is over capacity. Now, it's unclear to me, given the drawing from RPS on the proposed roundabout changes, can I ask if it's a physical change or is it just what I would call a cursory white lining change, please?
Is that on the Duke's Head Roundabout?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a physical change. I think if you could picture the roundabout as it is now, travelling northbound, it's not wide enough to get 3 vehicles across, whereas that's not shown on the drawing here. So that's physical works on the ground to improve that. And the same here, I think it's not quite wide enough to get 2 vehicles at the southern arm of that roundabout. So it's physical works that are proposed rather than just white lining.
As a follow-up, the green lines, are they new curb lines? Or, so that would be a physical change? Just to clarify, please.
Yeah, the green line denote improvements as part of the St Modwyn. So I think some of those are physical changes as well. But obviously, we're looking at what's proposed under this application, which is the extra, in effect, capacity provided by widening the junction onto the roundabout at these 2 points, plus some more minor works in terms of pavement improvements, tactile paving improvements in these areas here as well. But it's the actual widening of the arms onto the junction that the main works here.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, please.
Yes, a very useful site visit, Mr. Chairman, and the fact that I had a nice cycle ride there. And because, there is a lot of mention of cycling on this particular report, access to the site. So hopefully, not only for cycling and walking, that all of the available routes that people would like to take are available for them. And particularly because Worth Way is mentioned, and that's quite close by. It'd be nice to think there is a good solid link, other than people sharing the road like I did. I mean, the fact is that particular road is the sort of unofficial London to Brighton bike ride route, and there's no cycleways whatsoever on it that I know of. But I think looking at the application proposals overall, one might have thought, why isn't this going to be another residential site? The fact that we have an existing site, it's proposed to be expanded and improved, which I think should be encouraged. So I hear what people are saying about the site, but there must be a requirement, a need for this sort of type of accommodation to be provided and expanded. So I'd encourage it, and hopefully that access to the site for non-motorised vehicles is not impeded.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Jackson.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. As some other members of this committee, I visited the site earlier this week. I certainly noticed it was a fairly large site, which could probably have the capacity to take more industrial units than it has at the moment. If these are going to be small units, then likely to be full transit type vehicles rather than sort of 40-ton lorries are like to be servicing those smaller units. In terms of the periphery of the site, there seems to be quite a lot of wood and cover, so that protects the heritage parts of on the outside of the site. Looking at the particular issues, on the amendment sheet they refer to recommendation A on page 11. I would fully support that a section of pavement adjacent to the Turners Hill Road is part of the conditions of this permission. I certainly was aware, going down the side of that road, it's quite busy even at sort of mid-morning, so it must be hell at rush hour times in terms of the speed and volume of traffic using that road. And finally, there's obviously a great concern about turning left on leaving the site. Perhaps a slight modification of the street furniture and the signage there on the road should also be a condition to make it absolutely clear to any drivers that left turn only is only permitted on leaving the site into Turners Hill Road.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Mr. King, can you just clarify about the condition on that? That would be purely down to highways, I would assume, to...
Well, in terms of the footway that's proposed, it's just off the site here, that would be picked up under the Section 106 agreement because it's off-site work, so it would be dealt with that way. In terms of the minor changes to the central reservation area there, that's controlled by condition. I think it's condition 15 in the report. If members wanted that condition tweaked slightly, so there was further reference to additional signage or additional road markings directing vehicles again to turn left, that could be added to that condition. But as we saw from the site visit, there is an arrow that clearly says turn left from the site. But if we want further white lining, for example, that could be added to that condition, if that's what the committee wanted, a slight tweak.
Can I ask members if they want that put as in condition?
Yeah, I agree to that, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, if that's possible, Mr. King. I think I would add to the safety concerns and be more directive for them to turn left. Councillor Band.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad we're in for some tweaking this afternoon on the conditions. I've read the report, which is kind of pretty comprehensive, actually. It's one of the best I've seen for a long time. It's very detailed, and particularly the references to the previous two appeals, which were insightful reading as to the inspector's reasons for the refusal, but also kind of laying out why this application is a good deal more acceptable, particularly with reference to the ancient woodland being located at the southern end of the site. Which leads to a couple of things. One, I think Mr. King referred to a lighting condition, which I'm struggling to find. But there's reference to a lighting.
13, I think.
Can I have a page number on that, please?
Yeah, page 56.
Right, thank you. Wonderful, thank you. Right, the problem with many or most of our lighting conditions is that they concentrate on timing and also basic provision of lights rather than quantity rather than quality. And there is a good deal of, shall we say, empirical research which supports the conclusion that a lot of LED lighting produces blue light, which is not friendly to either our wildlife or indeed our pollinators and insects. And that can be ameliorated by putting in a requirement that the lighting temperature is 2700 kelvins, which is warm white, which is much more, shall we say, friendly to our wildlife. Doesn't keep awake all night, in other words. And I have a question which relates to the condition number 23 and 24 on page 58. This has been inserted by the Environmental Health team, and it's, for the absence of doubt, it's Monday to Friday 0800 to 1800 hours. And the same again for Saturdays, ending at 1300 hours with no work, no operation on Sundays or bank holidays. Could I ask if officers are able to actually advise us where the 8 o'clock start came from? I'm very pleased to see it there. I'm not criticising it, but it's the first time I've actually seen a planning application come forward with a condition that 8 o'clock is the start time, because it's more normally set at 7 o'clock.
Mr. King, do you want to answer that? Or?
Yeah, I think the Environmental Health Officer originally raised a query about the operating hours of the site, and that, I think, came from the Environmental Health Officer who suggested that that would be a suitable time, and the applicants have agreed that to those times, so that's how that's come about, essentially.
That's very encouraging. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, in answer to your other question on the lighting, the submission has to be submitted and approved in writing according to the laid down regulations by the ILP guidance notes as it states in the conditions.
That's what I'm afraid of. Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
I'd be very interested in hearing the justification for the large increase in floor area, generating only a 50% increase in transport movements. And secondly, I think that condition of, forget the number now, on the access does need tightening up so far as the right-hand turn is concerned.
So what condition was you talking about on that one?
Sorry?
Do you mention the condition?
Yeah, I think it's condition 15, I'm not absolutely certain. Just spoke about that.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's one we just spoke about, Councillor Webb. Yeah, agreed to alter that one, sorry. Yes, the floor space you mentioned. Mr. Kim, would like to take that? There's a maximum amount of floor space, I understand.
Yeah, I think the query was related as how the increase in floor space relates to the predicted traffic movements.
Yes.
Yeah. The application is accompanied by a full transport statement, and there's been quite a bit of discussion between the applicants and the Highway Authority, with the Highway Authority asking for additional information and additional works to be done. When applicants provide their transport statement, they're using nationally recognised databases in terms of X amount of floor space for a particular type of land use, then generates X amount of extra movements. And if applicants put forward transport statements that are outlandish and are clearly not rooted in reality, then the Highway Authority would recognise that and object to those. But you've seen from the report that the Highway Authority are satisfied that with the mitigation works proposed, that there wouldn't be a severe impact on the highway network in terms of capacity. And that is the test in planning policy. So the Highway Authority have looked at the applicant's figures and are satisfied with them, and they will, as I say, have compromised national sources in terms of being able to predict the amount of traffic from particular type of land uses.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, in overall terms, I think we need to keep everything in context. This is a very successful existing employment site. The density of the existing units is very low, considering the size of the site, as we saw, as Councillor Jackson said on Monday, very large site. The DP1 and DP14 of the district plan are the overriding policies, as I see it, in future sustainability to provide employment. Our district plan provides lots of housing, some 16,000, about 1,000 houses a year, but we need to provide jobs and additional jobs, which the district plan states as around about 543 per year. This site will definitely increase employment opportunities. I think in principle it's well thought through, it's well planned. I like the idea it's very well screened, so that there's no real effect on the 3 heritage listed buildings. I also like the small scale nature of each of the individual units, effectively maximum 2-storey and small detached units. It encourages SMEs and small business, existing businesses and further businesses. It's got excellent access to the M23, a couple of miles away, a good striking distance of lots of Tier 1 and particularly Tier 2 developments within the northern part of the district. So, I think it's a very good scheme, and notwithstanding that the traffic everywhere is busy, I use this roundabout a lot, and I know it's very busy, hence my question earlier about are there any physical changes? But in overall terms, I think it's a good scheme and I'm supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. Very well summed up. Thank you. Councillor Eve, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question and a comment. I should know the answer to this question, but what happens if we vote yes today? Do we ever get to see this again, or does it just go to the officers? Or do we get to see the final thing? Because obviously the scale of it, we're only being asked today to pronounce on access and principle of development. Does it come back before us?
Yes, what we're looking at today, Councillor Eves, is an outline permission with means of access. And as you've seen from that behind you there, whether this sort of development can be accommodated on the site. Once the outline application has been determined, it will come back to reserved matters. If it's approved, it will come back as reserved matters with design and layout and all the other things associated for debate on that.
Okay, that's good to know, because I'm looking at that. It looks like a rather pleasant series of scout huts. But then I see 130 parking spaces on top of what they've got now, and you realise how big the thing is. So I'm glad it will come back before us. Thank you.
It is rather a large site, so, that is illustrative, just to give members some idea where that can be accommodated. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, I listened to all the comments against Councillor Jackson, but particularly Councillor Whittaker's succinct summing up of the situation. I think I'd rather see it's an underutilised site, it's an existing site, and on balance, I would propose this site to committee to be accepted, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Peacock. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, just a quick point on the entrance to the site, and I wasn't clear exactly what Mr. King was saying about some extra lines. I know it's going to come back to the council, but perhaps this could be addressed before then. It's my old chestnut about the turn right into the site, having an extra lane to do so, considering the volume of traffic that is on this road. It would be helpful, to try and encourage other people to do other similar schemes further down the road. All down that road, you have to wait for cars, and it's near to that junction. So I wasn't clear what he was referring to about extra lining coming into the site, but if that could be clarified, and if it's not now, I will be raising it again at the future application.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. So I think we agreed that there was some sort of right, left turn.
Yeah, it's essentially would just be extra white lining on the access within the site, just directing you to turn left. So it all works.
Sorry,
in the site.
Sorry, can I stop that? I wasn't talking about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was talking about you being on Turners Hills Road, and you need to turn right into the site.
There is
and then you get cars piled up. You get cars piled up behind you. So there is an opportunity here with the space available on the land to actually widen that road so that you can allow the continuity of traffic behind the cars, additional cars that are coming into the site.
Yeah, that in terms of works to the access road, that's not part of the proposal that it is before the committee. It's just the very minor tweaks to that central reservation area there. But that's it in terms of physical works to that access. There's no proposal to put in a right turn lane on the Turners Hill Road or to do any other works within the site to that access. So that is the extent of it.
Thank you, Mr. King. No other speakers? Okay, before I go to the vote, I will read out the recommendations.
Chairman, you've got a proposer, but you haven't got a seconder at the moment.
Oh, right, sorry, beg your pardon. So I propose, may I have a seconder, please? Councillor Band.
You all seconding it.
Thank you. So before I go to the vote, go to the recommendation A. It is recommended that, subject to the completion of a satisfactory S106 legal agreement and/or legal undertaking to secure the required level of infrastructure contributions and the section of pavement adjacent to the Turners Hill Road and off-site improvements to the Duke's Head Roundabout, planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Recommendation B, if by the 10th of December 21, the applicants have not submitted a satisfactory signed S106 legal agreement and/or legal undertaking securing the necessary financial contributions, then it is recommended that the planning permission be refused at the discretion of the divisional leader for planning and economy for following reasons. The application fails to comply with policy TP20 of the Mid Sussex District Plan and paragraphs 55 and 57 of the National Planning Policy Framework in respect of the infrastructure required to serve the development. We go to the vote.
And I think you agreed that the condition 15 is going to be amended, yeah. So recorded vote, proposal is to approve on the recommendations the chairman read out. Councillor Bates. Approve. Councillor Eaves.
Against.
Councillor Forbes. For. Councillor Jackson. For. Councillor Band. For. Councillor Peacock. For. Councillor Sweatman.
For.
Councillor Webb. For. And Councillor Whittaker. For. That's 8 in favour and 1 against, Chairman, so it's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So that application is approved. Go to item 9, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. So I close this meeting at 3 o'clock, and can members just remain in the seats while the live stream finishes, please?